Before metal ships ever rose beyond the atmosphere, before missions carried the names of planets and instruments hummed with delicate measurements, there was something far simpler. A human being standing in the night. The sky then was not washed out by city lights. No satellites drifted overhead. It was only a deep black curtain scattered with cold and distant points of light. Perhaps in that moment, the first thing a person felt was not knowledge, but smallness. And from that smallness, a quiet question was born. Who are we amid all of this? Ancient civilizations answered with stories. They painted gods across the heavens, chariots of fire, pulling the sun through the sky, constellations shaped like heroes and monsters. Myth was not a mistake. It was the first way consciousness tried to touch what lay beyond its reach. Then one day, a man named Galileo lifted a lens toward the sky, and those points of light were no longer only divinity. They were worlds. Yet even as science began to replace myth, the original feeling remained. Blaise Pascal once wrote in Pensées, "The eternal silence of these infinite spaces frightens me." There is a gentle kind of fear in that silence. Not the fear of danger, but the fear of the infinite. For if space is infinite, where are we within it? And centuries later, as stronger telescopes gazed ever deeper into the cosmos, the question did not disappear. It simply grew. Carl Sagan in Cosmos wrote, "For small creatures such as we, the vastness is bearable only through love. Perhaps it is love for understanding that allows us to endure such immensity. We send signals into space. We listen for unfamiliar frequencies. We wonder if someone somewhere might be looking back. But tonight, as you lie here and let your mind drift among imagined stars, you do not need an answer. Curiosity is not a thirst that must be quenched at once. It is a small, warm flame that burns quietly in the dark. You are not small in a meaningless way. You are small in a beautiful way. Among billions of galaxies, there exists a being capable of asking about them. And perhaps the true miracle is not that we find the answers, but that we lifted our heads at all and began to ask. Let that question remain in the night, gently. There is no need to hurry. The universe is still there, and so are you. After humanity had gazed at the sky for thousands of years, told stories of gods and constellations, named each point of light against the night, there came a day when looking was no longer enough. We wanted to touch, not with bare hands, but with metal circuitry and slender antennae. The first vessels to leave Earth did not carry endless cheers. They carried anticipation, and sometimes silence. In the late 1960s, when the Soviet Union sent the Venera probes to Venus, it was no gentle stroll among the stars. Venus is not kind. Its surface pressure is more than 90 times that of Earth, and its heat is enough to melt lead. The Venera lander survived only a few minutes. A few minutes within a yellow haze of carbon dioxide and sulfuric acid. A few minutes before metal surrendered to pressure and flame. Yet, in those brief moments, they sent back the first images from the surface of another planet. Not a triumph, a testimony. We had touched a kind of hell and still managed to send a glance back. There is something profoundly human in doing what we know may destroy us simply to know. Friedrich Nietzsche once wrote in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, "You must have chaos within you to give birth to a dancing star." Perhaps those missions were that necessary chaos. Fragile experiments burning brightly for a short while, yet opening a wider sky for humanity. And then, Mars. Mars 3. In 1971, the lander touched down on the red planet. It transmitted data for about 20 seconds, then silence. 20 seconds is not enough to tell a complete story. 20 seconds is only enough to prove that we were there. The silence that followed was not total failure. It was more like a sentence cut short, a whisper unfinished. In life, how many things do we begin without ever hearing a reply? How many times do we send our words into the air, hoping for an answer, and receive only quiet space, teaches us to live with that silence. Then came Huygens, descending to Titan, a moon of Saturn drifting through a dense orange sky of hydrocarbons. No applause, no stage lights. Only a small device falling slowly through a distant atmosphere, carrying with it questions about life in the cold. Titan is not warm like Earth. Yet it has lakes, it has rain, not water but methane. When Huygens touched its surface in 2005, it revealed a landscape both alien and strangely familiar, as though the universe were whispering, "You are not the only expression of form." And then there was another experiment, not to search for life, but to test power. Starfish Prime. In 1962, the United States detonated a nuclear device in space, an artificial flash in the upper atmosphere. The consequences were more than light. It created an electromagnetic pulse that darkened Hawaii, formed artificial radiation belts, damaged satellites. That moment revealed that space is not only a place for exploration, it is also a place where humanity carries its unfinished parts. Immanuel Kant once wrote in Critique of Practical Reason, "Two things fill the mind with ever new and increasing admiration and awe, the starry heavens above me and the moral law within me." Perhaps Starfish Prime showed that the starry heavens above and the moral law within do not always move together. We can reach farther than ever before, yet the ethical question remains in the very hand that reaches. Seen from the outside, these missions may appear as mere historical facts, but if you listen closely, there is a slow music within them. The sound of metal cracking under the pressure of Venus. A Martian signal fading after 20 seconds. A quiet descent onto the frozen face of Titan. An artificial flash tearing across Earth's upper sky. All of them are attempts. Space is not only a realm of glorious victories. It is a realm of fragile trials where every success is paid for by many silent failures. And perhaps that is true of your life as well. You are not only the victories others can see, you are also the efforts no one knows about. The moments when you transmitted a signal into emptiness and heard nothing in return. Yet, like Mars 3, the signal lasting only 20 seconds does not make it meaningless. It remains proof that you dared. Tonight, as you listen to this story, let those missions become gentle reflections of yourself. A small vessel under immense pressure, an antenna sending its message into the dark, a device descending onto an unfamiliar world, not to conquer it once, but to know that you reached. The universe is vast, yet each time we touch it, even for a few minutes, human consciousness expands a little more. And within that expansion, there is not only knowledge, there is humility. Let your breathing slow, like a probe easing toward a distant surface. Space does not need to be conquered tonight, only listened to, and you as well. After the fragile missions, after the brief signals and trembling arms reaching into the dark, we are no longer facing a small device. We are facing a giant. Jupiter. If you have ever seen it through a telescope, you have seen bands of swirling clouds, streaks of orange and pale brown. And there, like an eye opened within the atmosphere, the great red spot. A storm that has endured for at least 300 years, 3 centuries. Imagine a storm on Earth lasting from the age of ancient empires until now, never dissolving, never tiring, only turning upon itself. There is something strange in contemplating a storm, older than generations of human lives. It reminds us that the universe does not measure time by the rhythm of our hearts. Marcus Aurelius once wrote in Meditations, "Time is a sort of river of passing events, and strong is its current." That river on Jupiter does not flow as we are used to. It churns within thick atmospheres where there is no solid ground, no shore, only motion. Jupiter has no solid surface upon which to stand. If you were to fall into it, you would descend through layers of cloud, through heavier gases, through mounting pressure, until matter itself becomes unfamiliar. Deep within hydrogen, the lightest and simplest element under crushing force may transform into metallic hydrogen, a form of matter that does not exist naturally on Earth, a state in which atoms behave like an electrical conductor. The heart of Jupiter may not be stone, not fire, but liquid metal born from the lightest substance in the cosmos. Is that not also like us? Sometimes the softest parts of us under sufficient pressure become strong. And yet, pressure is rarely gentle. Jupiter's magnetic field is immense, so vast that if it were visible from Earth, it would appear larger than the moon in our sky. It stretches millions of kilometers, creating intense radiation belts around the planet. If you stood nearby, you would not see familiar auroras like those of Earth. The light there is not meant for human eyes. It unfolds in spectrums we cannot perceive. There are beauties that exist which we will never directly see, and perhaps this is true within each of us. Invisible currents, unseen fields, quietly active, requiring no witness. Yet amid that immensity, Jupiter is not only storms and metal, it has moons. Europa is one of them. Europa's surface is sheathed in ice, cracked, cold, like a world long dead. But beneath that frozen crust, scientists believe there may be a liquid ocean deeper than all of Earth's oceans combined. A hidden sea. If this is true, beneath that cold exterior, there may be water heat from the moon's core, and perhaps life. Dostoevsky once wrote in The Brothers Karamazov, "The mystery of human existence lies not in just staying alive, but in finding something to live for, Europa." If it holds a subterranean ocean, is a symbol of that truth. Cold on the outside, potentially abundant within. Perhaps human beings are the same. We look at a giant like Jupiter and feel small, but that smallness is not meaninglessness. It is the awareness that we stand before something beyond full comprehension, and that can be peaceful. Albert Einstein once said, "The most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious." Not every mystery must be unraveled at once. Not every question demands an immediate answer. Jupiter exists as a reminder that the universe is larger than any model we can construct. And so are you. You have depths no one has yet touched. Inner pressures that shape you over time, storms that may last longer than you expect, and perhaps beneath a crust of silence you carry a warm ocean you have not yet discovered. Tonight, as your mind drifts across the swirling clouds of Jupiter, allow yourself not to understand everything. There is no need to measure it all, no need to decode every mystery. Simply acknowledge that some worlds are too vast, and precisely because they are vast, they humble us. Let your breathing slow, like a quiet vessel gliding past that gaseous giant. Jupiter continues to turn. Europa keeps its secret. The universe does not hurry, and neither must you. After we have flown past the endless storms of Jupiter, after we have glimpsed the metallic heart of a gaseous giant, the journey now slows. Not because the mysteries have faded, but because they have grown closer. Mars. The red planet does not overwhelm us with its size, it quiets us with its traces. When orbiters circle Mars and send back their images, we do not see only dust. We see valleys that seem carved by flowing water, vast plains shaped like ancient seabeds, layers of sediment that read like the memory of a wetter age. Perhaps long before Earth held dense forests and bird-song, Mars carried an ocean. And if there was water, was there life? The question does not roar. It does not ignite like a rocket. It hovers. One of the signs that has stirred scientific curiosity is methane detected in the Martian atmosphere. Methane does not endure long in that environment. Sunlight and chemical reactions break it down quickly. So if methane appears, something must be replenishing it. It could be geology. It could be inorganic chemistry. But on Earth, methane is often entwined with life. Soren Kierkegaard once wrote in concluding unscientific postscript, Life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. When we look at Mars, we too are understanding backward. We search within rock, within air, within numbers to reconstruct a story already past. In 1996, a meteorite named ALH 84001, found in Antarctica but originating from Mars, stirred the world. Inside it were microscopic structures that some scientists suggested might be fossilized microbes. The news spread like a wave. Could this be proof that life once breathed on another world? Then came skepticism. Those structures might also arise from non-biological processes. Debate followed. No final consensus emerged. And so, ALH 84001 became a symbol not of confirmation, but of suspension, between belief and doubt, between hope and caution. Earlier, still in 1976, the Viking landers conducted experiments searching directly for life on the Martian surface. One experiment produced results that seemed positive, as though something was metabolizing nutrients. Yet another failed to detect organic molecules as expected. The contradiction left the question suspended for decades. If the same experiment were conducted on Earth, we would not hesitate in our interpretation. But because it occurred on Mars, we must remain careful. There is something deeply human in that caution. Carl Jung once wrote in Memories, Dreams, Reflections, "We cannot change anything unless we accept it." Perhaps what is hardest to accept is not the possibility of life beyond us, but the uncertainty itself. Then there is the hypothesis of dormant microbes. On Earth, some organisms survive extreme conditions, frozen for thousands of years, awakening when circumstances turn favorable. If Mars was once warm and wet, then gradually became cold and dry, perhaps life did not vanish entirely. Perhaps it only waits. Beneath frozen soil, within deep rock layers, there is something tender in that idea. Not a brilliant civilization, not cities of light. Only small microbes patient. Like parts of you that were once vibrant, then frozen by time, by injury, by disappointment. They are not gone. They are sleeping. Mars is therefore more than a red planet. It is a mirror of memory. An ocean withdrawn, leaving dry shores that whisper. Albert Camus, in The Myth of Sisyphus, wrote, "In the depth of winter, I finally learned that within me there lay an invincible summer. Perhaps beneath Mars's long winter there once lay an invincible summer. And perhaps even if life is no longer there, the possibility that it once existed is enough to alter how we see the universe. We are not searching for complex beings. We seek a small sign, a molecule, a structure, an unusual chemical reaction. For if there is even a fragile trace, we know life is not a singular accident. But tonight, as you listen to the story of Mars, you need not decide anything. You need not choose belief or disbelief. Simply remain with the feeling that perhaps long ago on that dusty red world, something once breathed. And if life could arise in conditions so fragile, then the life within you, through all the collisions and droughts you have endured, may be more resilient than you think. Let your breathing slow, like a thin wind passing over the dry plains of Mars. Perhaps there were once waves there. Perhaps sunlight once shimmered upon water. And even if that ocean has long withdrawn, its memory remains etched into stone. Just as your own memories remain not to sadden you, but to remind you that you have lived, that you have moved, that you have had your own summer. The universe does not rush to conclude, and neither must you. After we have crossed dusty red worlds and oceans that may have vanished, the journey turns closer now. Close enough that we can see it each night. The moon. Long before humanity knew how to write, the moon was already there. It grew alongside stories, lullabies, whispered prayers. It seemed unchanging, a familiar face among countless distant stars. And yet, if you listen more carefully, you will discover that the moon is not silent at all. During the years of the Apollo program, astronauts placed seismometers upon its surface. What they found was unexpected moonquakes. Gentle tremors deep within that quiet satellite. Not violent like earthquakes on Earth. No roar, no cracking ground. But they were there. They were caused by the pull of Earth, by the very planet that once gave birth to the moon. When Earth tugs, the moon responds with the faintest of shivers. There is something poetic in the thought that these two bodies continue to influence one another even after billions of years apart. The moon was once part of Earth. According to the leading hypothesis, it formed from a colossal collision in our planet's early history. A fragment cast into space, gradually gathering itself into a companion. A child born from cosmic violence. And now it is slowly drifting away. About 3 to 4 centimeters each year. A number so small you will never notice it in your lifetime. Yet across millions of years, that distance becomes profound. Heraclitus once said, "No man ever steps in the same river twice." Perhaps the same is true of the sky. We never look upon exactly the same moon twice. It stands a little farther away each night. Change is not always loud. Sometimes it unfolds in complete silence. The moon holds other secrets as well. In permanently shadowed regions near its poles, places where sunlight has never reached, probes have detected signs of water. Water in darkness, where there is no dawn. The idea is beautiful even in what appears most barren and cold. Something life-giving may lie hidden. John Milton once wrote in Paradise Lost, "The mind is its own place, and in itself can make a heaven of hell, a hell of heaven." Perhaps the moon is like that too. Its surface may be harsh, yet in its shadows something gentler endures. And then we realize the image of the moon hanging in the sky, symbol of stability and eternity, is a tender illusion. It trembles. It holds water in darkness. It is moving away, just as relationships, memories, and things we once believed would last forever. You may remember a chapter of your life, a place, a person that you thought would never change. But time, like gravity, is always pulling things into motion. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "Observe constantly that all things take place by change. Change is not the enemy. It is the nature of things. The moon is still there each night. Yet it is not the same moon of millions of years ago, and neither are you. You are not the person you were 5 years ago, or even last week." Separation can feel sorrowful. The thought that one distant day the moon will appear smaller in our sky. That perfect total eclipses, when the moon fits precisely over the sun, will not occur forever. Yet that change does not diminish the beauty of the present moment. It deepens it. Tonight, as you close your eyes and imagine the moon suspended above, remember that it does not stand still. It trembles softly under Earth's pull. It cradles water in its shadows. It is quietly drifting away. And none of this makes it less beautiful. On the contrary, it makes it more alive, just as you are. The tremors within you, the changes you have not yet spoken, are not signs of instability. They are proof that you are still moving within the current of time. Let your breath fall into rhythm with the tides the moon raises upon Earth. A gentle pull rising and falling. Nothing is entirely still. Nothing is entirely lost. There are only very slow movements unfolding even when we do not notice them. And within that movement, there is a quiet, abiding peace. After we have looked upon our ancient companion, slowly drifting away, after we have accepted that nothing truly stands still, the journey now brings us to a place both familiar and strange. Venus. From Earth, it shines brilliantly. The ancients called it the morning star, the evening star, a soft light upon the sky. Yet that gentleness conceals another truth. Venus may once have resembled Earth very closely. Scientific models suggest that billions of years ago it could have held oceans, rain, a milder atmosphere, a potential twin to our world. So, what happened? A runaway greenhouse effect. Not the phrase we hear in passing on daily news, but a version beyond control. As water evaporated into the atmosphere, water vapor trapped heat. Rising temperatures caused more evaporation. A loop, a cycle without a stopping point. Eventually, the oceans vanished. Water molecules were split by solar radiation. Hydrogen escaped into space. Oxygen recombined with carbon to form a dense blanket of carbon dioxide. That atmosphere now traps heat so intensely that Venus's surface can melt lead. A world that might once have been paradise became an inferno. There is something sobering in that thought. Friedrich Nietzsche once wrote in Beyond Good and Evil, "Whoever fights monsters should see to it that in the process he does not become a monster." Perhaps natural systems are similar. When one element slips beyond balance, the entire structure may transform into something unrecognizable. Yet the story of Venus is not only destruction, it is also a lesson in fragility. On Earth, a shift of only a few degrees in average temperature can profoundly alter ecosystems. Life depends on very narrow physical margins. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "Everything is in flux." Life exists not because the universe was perfectly arranged, but because within its motion there is a narrow range that fits. Venus stepped outside that range. And what unsettles us further is this: the change did not happen in a single day. Not through an explosion, not through a lone asteroid. It was the slow amplification of cycles. Perhaps personal life unfolds the same way. A small habit, an unspoken emotion, a prolonged imbalance. Over time, they may create transformations larger than we expect. Yet even within that furnace, there is a layer of cloud about 50 to 60 kilometers above the surface, where pressure and temperature resemble Earth more closely. A middle region. Some scientists have wondered whether microbial life might exist there. The hypothesis remains debated, but the idea is beautiful. Even in a world that has gone astray, there may be layers where life clings on. Carl Jung once wrote in The Undiscovered Self, "In each of us there is another whom we do not know." Perhaps Venus is the same. Beneath its searing exterior, there may be aspects yet unexplored, and you as well. You may have passed through periods of imbalance, times when emotion felt overheated by pressure, fear, or hurt. You may have felt that you had taken a wrong turn. Yet, like the cloud layer of Venus within you, there may still be a gentler zone, a place not too hot, not too cold, just enough for life to continue. Albert Camus wrote in The Myth of Sisyphus, "The struggle itself toward the heights is enough to fill a man's heart." Perhaps the journey of a planet like that of a person is not about avoiding every misstep. It is about rediscovering balance within motion. Venus reminds us that the universe guarantees no eternal stability. Balance is always delicate, but delicate does not mean hopeless. Tonight, as you let your mind soften, imagine yourself floating within Venus's high clouds. Beneath you, temperatures that melt metal. Above you, the light of the sun. And in between, a region gentle enough to endure. Your life may be the same. There have been parts that burned, oceans that evaporated. Yet there are also higher layers where you can breathe again. Let your breath slow, like a cloud drifting within a dense atmosphere. Balance is not something handed to us. It is something tended gently, slowly. And within that fragility, there is a quiet and enduring beauty. After we have seen lost oceans and worlds that might once have been paradise, the journey is no longer about looking. It is about listening. In the stillness of space, there is no sound as on Earth, no wind, no vibration carried through air. But there are waves, radio waves, electromagnetic ripples crossing light years. And one day in 1977, an astronomer named Jerry Eman noticed something unusual in the printed data from the Big Ear radio telescope, a sequence of characters stronger than expected. He circled it and wrote beside it a single word: "Wow." The wow signal lasted 72 seconds. Then it vanished. It never repeated. No one knows with certainty where it came from. There are hypotheses about comets, about interference, but to this day, no explanation is complete. A strong signal, a brief moment, then silence. There is something deeply human in that reaction, writing a simple word like, wow. Not an equation, not a formal report, just pure astonishment. Blaise Pascal once wrote in Pensée, "The eternal silence of these infinite spaces frightens me." And perhaps because that silence is so profound, when something unfamiliar appears, even for 72 seconds, it is enough to stir the heart. But the wow signal was not the only whisper that made us listen more closely. In recent years, astronomers have discovered fast radio bursts, extraordinarily powerful pulses of radio waves from distant galaxies. They last only milliseconds. A single beat, then gone. Some have been traced to highly magnetized neutron stars, magnetars. Yet much remains uncertain. The universe does not send us messages written plainly. It sends pulses, like a colossal heart beating across billions of light years. And then there is Boyajian star, a star whose brightness dims in unusual and difficult to explain ways. At times, it has faded by more than 20%. Hypotheses range from cosmic dust to immense artificial structures, what some once imagined as a Dyson sphere. The idea, though speculative, stirred global imagination. What if an advanced civilization had built a structure around its star to harvest energy? Not because we are certain it exists, but because the possibility makes us feel slightly less alone. Carl Sagan once wrote in Cosmos, "The cosmos is within us. We are made of star stuff. If we are fashioned from the same material as the stars, then perhaps somewhere that material has organized itself into another consciousness. Yet we must face a simple reality. So far, there is no confirmed evidence of intelligence beyond Earth. Only signals. Only the silence between them." The idea of von Neumann probe self-replicating machines sent to spread across the galaxy is one of those contemplative hypotheses. If a civilization wished to explore the cosmos, it might dispatch robots capable of copying themselves, expanding from system to system. So why have we not seen them? That question leads to the Fermi paradox. If the universe is so vast, and life may arise in many places, where are they? Immanuel Kant wrote in Critique of Pure Reason, "Two things fill the mind with ever new and increasing admiration and awe: the starry heavens above me and the moral law within me." Perhaps the awe does not come only from the possibility of others out there, but from the fact that we are conscious enough to ask. Perhaps the universe has whispered. Perhaps those signals are only natural phenomena. Perhaps we are still alone in this galaxy. But the most profound thing is not the answer. It is that we are listening. In life, how many times have you sent a signal, a message, a word, a glance, and then waited? That waiting is like radio telescopes scanning the night sky, patient, uncertain, yet continuing. Albert Camus wrote in The Myth of Sisyphus, "The struggle itself toward the heights is enough to fill a man's heart." Perhaps the search itself, even without immediate discovery, is enough to widen the human heart. Tonight, as you lie in the quiet, imagine yourself listening to deep space. Not with your ears, but with a gentle attention. Perhaps you will hear nothing, perhaps only stillness. Yet that stillness is not empty. It is the space in which possibility resides. The universe may have whispered, or it may still be holding its secret. But you, with your capacity to listen, with your soft curiosity beating in your chest, are already part of that dialogue. Let your breath become a small signal, sent not because you are certain of a reply, but because in the very act of listening there is a profound connection. And within that connection, there is a peace deep enough for you to close your eyes and allow the night to hold you. After listening to signals from the void, after asking whether someone out there might be calling, we now take one step further. Not to ask, where are they, but to wonder if they exist. What might they be like? We are accustomed to thinking of life in our own image. Water, cells, a double helix of DNA. Carbon as the quiet foundation of every organic molecule. Carbon humble yet flexible, capable of forming chains, complex enough to give rise to consciousness. But is that the only path some scientists have asked about silicon life? Silicon sits just beneath carbon in the periodic table. It can form similar bonds. Might there be a world where under different pressures and temperatures, silicon becomes the foundation of biology? On Earth, silicon is not as versatile as carbon in our present conditions. But the universe is not limited to Earth's conditions. Perhaps somewhere on a hotter, drier planet with unfamiliar chemistry, silicon forms the basis of living structures. The idea asks us to widen our imagination. Then there was the controversial story of arsenic bacteria in 2010, when a research group announced they had found microbes capable of using arsenic in place of phosphorus within their biological framework. The claim was later challenged and refined. Yet it raised a crucial question: might biology be more flexible than we assume? Perhaps life adapts beyond the boundaries we set for it. Nietzsche wrote in The Gay Science, "We possess art lest we perish of the truth." Perhaps scientific imagination is also a form of art. It prevents us from being confined by what we already know. There is also the idea of plasma life, that in extreme environments such as stellar coronas or ionized clouds, self-organizing plasma structures might exist. Not cells, not organic molecules, but stable patterns of energy. Life does not necessarily require flesh. It does not necessarily require water. It may be structure information, the persistence of order against chaos. And then there is a gentler, closer concept, the shadow biosphere, the suggestion that even here on Earth there may exist a parallel form of life microbes based on alternative chemistry thriving in environments we have not fully understood, overlooked because we search only for what resembles ourselves. Carl Jung wrote in Ion, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Perhaps the shadow biosphere is a metaphor for that, not only in nature but within us. There are parts of ourselves that live parallel to our familiar awareness, not matching the image we hold of who we are, yet alive. We often believe there is only one correct way to exist, one correct way to live, one correct way to be ourselves. But the universe may be broader than such definitions. If life can arise in silicon or within plasma or hidden in the darkness of deep oceans, then perhaps human beings too can exist in more emotional forms, more rhythms, more modes of being than we have allowed ourselves. Albert Einstein once said, "The most incomprehensible thing about the universe is that it is comprehensible." Yet perhaps there is another truth: the universe may not need to be understood entirely in the ways we expect. Tonight, as you consider life not based on carbon, without a heartbeat like yours, without breath like yours, allow yourself to feel something gentle. You are not the sole template of life, and you do not need to resemble anyone else to be considered right. Somewhere, perhaps on a molten world, silicon may be weaving strange structures. Within clouds of plasma, organized patterns of energy may endure. And perhaps even on this planet, in the dark beneath our feet, there are organisms we have not yet recognized. Life may not need to resemble us, and that does not make us smaller. It makes us humbler. Let your breathing slow, like a structure quietly organizing itself within chaos. You do not need a fixed form to exist. You do not need to fit a pattern to have worth. The universe is vast enough to contain innumerable forms of life. And within that vastness, there is room for you with all your differences, your unexamined shadows, your yet unimagined possibilities. Let that thought drift gently through your mind, like a star crossing the night sky. There is no need to grasp it tightly, only to know that it may exist. After we have imagined unfamiliar forms of life, after we have listened for signals in the dark, a natural question arises: if someone is out there, how do we reach them? The distances between stars are nothing like the distances between cities. Light, the fastest thing in the universe, takes more than 4 years to travel from the nearest star system to Earth. With our current technology, the journey would require tens of thousands of years, a voyage longer than the history of human civilization itself. And so scientists began to dream. Light sails, gossamer-thin sails, pushed not by burning fuel, but by the gentle pressure of photons. No traditional propellant, only light. The idea sounds like poetry, a ship that does not rely on fire, but glides through the void, carried by radiance. There is something profoundly tender in that image. No thunderous explosion, no violent thrust. Only light touching a surface and gradually, very slowly, urging it forward. Perhaps human beings move the same way. It is not always explosive strength that carries us far. Sometimes it is the quiet forces, steady, persistent, that change our course. Then there is the fusion drive and engine that seeks to imitate the reactions at the core of stars. If we could harness nuclear fusion in a stable and sustained way, we might travel far faster than chemical rockets allow. Yet containing a miniature star within a chamber is no simple task. Albert Einstein once wrote in a 1934 letter, "The most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious." Fusion is one of those mysteries we are slowly approaching, though not yet mastering. And then there is antimatter. When matter and antimatter meet, they release immense energy, as captured in the familiar equation E equals mc squared. A tiny amount can produce astonishing power. Yet antimatter is extraordinarily difficult to create and even more difficult to store. A single miscalculation could release energy beyond control. These ideas feel like standing at a threshold. Behind us lies the familiar solar system. Before us stretches the ocean between stars. And then even bolder concepts emerge. Warp drives bending space-time itself to contract the distance between 2 points. Wormholes, hypothetical tunnels linking distant regions of the cosmos. According to Einstein's general theory of relativity, space-time can indeed be curved by mass and energy. But to create a stable warp bubble or sustain a traversable wormhole, we would require forms of exotic matter or energy not yet observed. They may exist, they may not. Immanuel Kant once wrote in Critique of Pure Reason, Space and Time, are not things in themselves, but forms of intuition. If space-time is part of the fabric of perception and physics, might there come a day when we learn to bend it as we bend metal? Yet when we speak of leaving the solar system, we are not speaking only of engineering. We are speaking of limits. The limits of physics, of energy, of human lifespan. Friedrich Nietzsche wrote in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, "What is great in man is that he is a bridge and not an end." Perhaps these technologies are bridges, not necessarily for us to cross immediately, but to remind us that humanity is not the final chapter of its own journey. Our generation may not witness the first ship reaching Alpha Centauri. It may take centuries, yet the act of imagining it has already changed us. Just as looking at the night sky does not alter the stars' positions, but transforms the one who looks. Tonight, as you think of these engines, light pushing sails, fusion burning quietly, space-time bending, let them become symbols, not of speed, but of longing. You do not need to leave this planet to understand that. Each time you cross a personal boundary, a fear, an old habit, you too are bending the inner space of your own being. Some limits appear fixed. Yet sometimes what must shift is not the distance itself, but the way we see it. The universe may demand that we reshape physics to reach the stars, but in this moment, you need not change anything grand. Simply lie still. Breathe slowly, like a light sail being gently carried through the dark. No hurry, no strain. The journey to the stars may remain far away, but in this moment, you are already part of that longing. And that longing, soft and luminous, is enough to let your mind drift into sleep. After dreaming of light sails and tunnels through space-time, perhaps it is time to turn our gaze to the nearest stretch of space around us. Not distant galaxies, but Earth's orbit. When we imagine space, we think of vastness of emptiness. Yet in truth, the region just above our planet is growing increasingly crowded. Thousands of satellites circle Earth, and millions of smaller fragments, remnants of collisions, discarded rocket stages, shards of metal long stripped of purpose, travel alongside them. Each tiny piece moves at roughly 7 to 8 kilometers per second. At such speeds, even a fragment the size of a coin can cause serious damage. The scientist Donald Kessler once warned of a possible scenario. If the density of orbital debris exceeds a certain threshold, collisions will generate more fragments, leading to further collisions, a cascading chain reaction. The Kessler syndrome. An orbit once considered empty, becoming a web of chaos. There is something unsettling in realizing that even the sky above us can be so delicate. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "Everything is interwoven, and the web is holy." Earth's orbit is not an isolated void. It is part of a network upon which modern life depends. GPS systems, weather forecasts, global communications, financial transactions. Each morning we wake and trust that our phones will locate us precisely, that tomorrow's weather can be predicted, that signals will travel across oceans. Yet all of this relies on small satellites quietly circling the planet. And those satellites share their space with debris. Immanuel Kant wrote in Groundwork of the Metaphysics of Morals Act, "Only according to that maxim, whereby you can at the same time will that it should become a universal law." If every nation launches satellites without regard for long-term consequences, if each collision adds fragments without plans for removal, could orbit one day become unusable? Yet this chapter is not meant to sow anxiety. It is a reminder that even systems we do not see require care. Like the mind, there are small thoughts, unresolved feelings orbiting within your awareness. Each seems harmless on its own, but if they collide, if they multiply unnoticed, they may create an inner cascade. Soren Kierkegaard once wrote in The Sickness unto Death, "Anxiety is the dizziness of freedom." The freedom to launch satellites to explore space carries responsibility, just as the freedom to think and feel carries the responsibility of tending to one's inner life. Orbit does not become hazardous overnight. It is the result of decades of accumulation. A mind does not become overwhelmed because of a single thought. Everything gathers gradually. And so we see space is not only a place for dreaming, it is also a mirror of our behavior. There is, however, comfort in this. Scientists and engineers are seeking ways to reduce space debris, designing satellites that deorbit after their missions end, developing technologies to remove fragments from orbit. We may create imbalance, but we are also capable of repair. Albert Camus wrote in The Myth of Sisyphus, "The struggle itself toward the heights is enough to fill a man's heart." Perhaps maintaining a safe orbit is such a struggle, not glamorous, not loud, but essential. Tonight, as you imagine small pieces of metal silently circling Earth, let the image become a gentle metaphor. There may be small things in your life that need clearing, not through panic, but through patient attention. A fragile orbit is not a sign of collapse. It is a reminder of connection. Nothing exists alone. Each satellite depends on clean space around it. Each peaceful thought depends on not allowing too much emotional debris to accumulate. Let your breathing slow, like an object stabilizing its orbit. Even orbit is not perfectly secure, yet it can be tended. And so can you. Within that fragility lies a quiet invitation to live more consciously, to care for the unseen spaces around you, and to let your mind drift into the night without carrying too many fragments with it. After we have looked at the fragile orbit around Earth, after realizing that even the nearest space is not entirely still, the journey now turns inward, not outward into the cosmos, but inward into the very structure of reality itself. There are things we believe we understand, like an object falling to the ground. Gravity. We say that Earth pulls everything toward it. Isaac Newton described this pull as an interaction between masses. Then Albert Einstein widened the picture, suggesting that gravity is not a conventional force at all, but the curvature of space-time. Mass bends the invisible fabric of the universe, and other objects follow the curve. It is a beautiful image. Yet what is strange is this. At the quantum level, we still do not know what gravity truly is. We possess two extraordinarily precise theories, quantum mechanics and general relativity, but they do not fully reconcile. There is a gap, and within that gap, there is humility. Einstein once wrote, "The most incomprehensible thing about the universe is that it is comprehensible." The universe can be described in mathematics, yet it is not entirely grasped. Then there is the double-slit experiment. A particle of light, a photon passing through two narrow slits, does not behave like a tiny marble. It forms an interference pattern like a wave. But when we place a device to observe which slit it passes through, the pattern changes. It seems as though the behavior of the particle depends on whether it is observed. This does not mean consciousness simply creates reality in a naive sense. But it reminds us that measurement and reality are not entirely separate. Niels Bohr once said, "Anyone who is not shocked by quantum theory has not understood it." Perhaps that shock is a natural response to touching the deepest foundations of physics. And then we step even further into the hypothesis of the multiverse. According to certain interpretations of quantum mechanics, whenever a particle has multiple possibilities, reality may branch into many versions. In one branch outcome, A occurs. In another outcome, B. That would mean there may exist countless versions of you, of me, of every choice ever made. The idea is at once strange and gentle. William James wrote in "The will to believe our passional nature not only lawfully may, but must decide an option between propositions. We live within one branch of reality, and our choices still matter here. Even if infinite possibilities exist, this moment remains singular to you." And finally, there is time. We experience time as a flow from past to present to future. Yet in the fundamental equations of physics, there is no clear arrow of time. The equations function the same if time is reversed. So what creates the feeling of flow? Some suggest entropy. The gradual increase of disorder gives time its direction. Others propose that time is simply another dimension within four-dimensional space-time, where past and future coexist like points in space. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "Time is a sort of river of passing events, and strong is its current." But if time does not truly flow as we imagine, perhaps the river does not run only one way. Perhaps we are simply moving through it in the only manner our consciousness can comprehend. The universe may be deeper than our awareness itself, yet that does not make us lost. On the contrary, it reminds us that the very capacity to ask such questions is extraordinary. Immanuel Kant once wrote, "Two things fill the mind with ever new and increasing admiration and awe: the starry heavens above me, and the moral law within me." Perhaps the awe arises not only from the stars, but from our ability to reflect upon them. Tonight, as you lie in stillness, let these questions not become burdens. You do not need to resolve quantum gravity before sleep. You do not need to decide whether the multiverse exists. You do not need to fully comprehend the nature of time. Simply feel that reality is far broader than your perception of it. And within that vastness, you do not need to hold everything. Let these mysteries remain like distant stars. They do not need to be touched to shine. Let your breathing slow. Time may be a river or merely a structure of awareness, but in this moment, you are here. And that, though small among infinite possibilities, is still part of the profound wonder we call reality. After passing through the equations of gravity, the hypotheses of the multiverse, and even engines that might bend space-time, the journey now softens unexpectedly. not with a grander theory, but with a tomato. There have been tomato seeds sent into space, carried into orbit, returned to Earth, planted and eaten. An ordinary thing. And precisely for that reason, extraordinary. Amid the vast portrait of galaxies, we still care whether a seed will sprout. We still wonder whether weightlessness changes the taste of fruit. It is not monumental science. It is the continuation of life. Carl Jung once wrote in Memories, Dreams, Reflections, "In each of us there is another whom we do not know. Perhaps within each person, alongside the longing to touch the stars, there is also something simple, a wish to carry the familiar flavor of Earth. Then there are ashes sent into space, a small portion of a human life placed aboard a spacecraft, leaving the planet where that person once lived and breathed. Not to explore, not to measure, simply to continue the journey. The thought is both sorrowful and beautiful. We know we are finite, and yet we still wish to leave a trace, even if it is only a particle of dust among the stars." Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "Soon you will have forgotten all things. Soon all things will have forgotten you." And perhaps that is why we send ashes into orbit. Not to defy forgetting, but to dissolve into something larger. Then there was a golf shot on the moon. An astronaut in a land without air, without sound, without wind, swung a club and watched the ball drift far in gentle gravity. The image is at once innocent and absurd. Amid the gravity of a space mission, a human being still chose to play. Nietzsche wrote in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, "One must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star." Perhaps that golf shot was a very small dancing star, a moment reminding us that we are not only creatures of survival, but creatures of play. And then a pizza delivered to the International Space Station. A company on Earth paid millions of dollars simply to claim that it had delivered pizza beyond orbit. It sounds foolish, but imagine an astronaut opening that familiar box in weightlessness. Amid metal walls, instrument screens, and the hum of artificial air, the taste becomes a thread back home. Fyodor Dostoevsky wrote in The Brothers Karamazov, "Love life more than the meaning of it." Perhaps these small objects, tomatoes, pizza, a golf swing, are expressions of love for life itself more than for grand meanings. We do not explore the cosmos only to answer whether we are alone. We carry with us habits, memories, jokes, and very human longings. The universe may be cold, but human beings are not. And that contrast is gentle. Amid infinity, we remember meals. Amid vacuum, we think of games. Amid equations, we carry the ashes of those we loved. Perhaps it is these things that make space exploration humane. Not conquest, but continuity. And as you lie there listening to this story, perhaps you notice something soft within yourself. You too carry very human objects in your mind. A small memory, a favorite meal, an old humorous story, someone who has gone yet still remains. Amid great questions about multiverses and time, it is these small things that keep us from drifting away. The universe does not demand that we become vast. It simply allows us to be human. And perhaps that is the most beautiful thing of all. Let that thought settle gently. Imagine a small vessel drifting among the stars, within it not only instruments and data, but seeds, ashes, laughter, and familiar flavors. Amid immensity, humanity carries small things. And because of that, the universe no longer feels entirely cold. Let your breathing slow. Let your thoughts grow softer. There is no need to become a star. It is enough to hold on to what is deeply human within you. In infinity, even something small can shine. Your breathing slows. Your thoughts grow softer. There is no need to become a star. It is enough to hold on to what is deeply human within you. Within infinity, even something small is enough to shine. And now, after we have passed through the storms of Jupiter, the lost oceans of Mars, the silent signals from the void, And even the equations that refuse complete reconciliation, the voice can slow. Not to summarize, not to gather every idea into a single tidy conclusion, only to settle them down, very gently. You do not need to understand everything. Perhaps at moments in this journey, your mind tried to grasp it all: the nature of gravity, the possibility of a multiverse, the question of whether microbes might be breathing in the clouds of Venus. But tonight, you do not need to carry it all. The universe continues to expand. Galaxies drift apart at speeds we can only describe in numbers. Light from distant stars continues its journey whether or not anyone is there to see it. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." We do not command the expansion of the cosmos. We cannot prevent a star from collapsing. We cannot reverse time, but we can choose how to remain within this moment. And this moment does not ask you to solve every mystery. There is a gentle humility in realizing that we are not the center of everything. Immanuel Kant once wrote in Critique of Practical Reason, "Two things fill the mind with ever new and increasing admiration and awe: the starry heavens above me and the moral law within me." The starry sky above, the moral law within. Perhaps that is enough. You do not need to know how many parallel universes there might be. You do not need to determine whether gravity leaks into hidden dimensions. It is enough to know that you are here within a vast universe with a consciousness capable of wonder, and that alone is a small miracle. Albert Einstein once said, "There are only two ways to live your life. One is as though nothing is a miracle. The other is as though everything is a miracle." Tonight, you do not need to decide which is true. Simply allow yourself to feel a little wonder, not to stimulate the mind, but to soothe it. The universe does not require you to remain awake in order to function. Particles continue to vibrate. Quantum fields hum quietly. Artificial vessels still orbit their planets, but you may rest. Fyodor Dostoevsky wrote in Notes from Underground, "To be too conscious is an illness. Perhaps excessive awareness of everything can become a burden. So in this moment, let a few questions remain behind, not because they are unimportant, but because they do not need to be answered right now." Imagine yourself as a small vessel drifting among the stars. No need to accelerate. No need to alter your course. Simply drifting. Your breathing slows like the steady motion of an object in space, without friction, without haste. You are not small in the sense of being meaningless. You are small in the sense of belonging to something greater. And in that belonging there is peace. Perhaps tomorrow you will once again read about new theories, new missions, new mysterious signals. But tonight, all questions may settle like cosmic dust falling softly through distant light. You do not need to understand everything. You do not need to hold on to it all. Just be here. Just feel that within an ever-expanding universe, there is a very small, very quiet moment in which you are breathing. And that is enough. Let that thought soften, like red-shifted light from a distant galaxy, like a quiet vessel passing through deep darkness. The night remains, the stars remain, and you in your finitude and fragility remain part of that silent symphony. And now, let every question fall asleep before you do.